And week 6, Dave Lochran, Ben Rasa, got a good show ahead of you today, or ahead of us today for you, ahead of us, ahead of both of us, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't really matter at this rate. How you doing, Ben? We get 12 games on the docket for this 1 to 4 p.m. slate.
Yeah, I'm all right. It's cold. It is cold in
Dude,
New York.
miserable, right?
Like
Miserable.
I'm burrowed. It's yeah, I don't know. This has happened multiple times. I was talking to Josh before the show. I had a good idea of what I wanted to do. I woke up and I'm playing guys I haven't really even heard of. Like people enter my lineups who didn't even know Capri Bibbs was in the NFL until not that long ago. Yeah, there's these injuries, they really open up some real value. It's gonna be a game changer.
I stayed in bed longer today just because it was so cold outside of the bed. Like
Yeah.
I didn't want to move.
No, you don't. I wish I had a quilt on right now. Just went full Arctic on the show.
It's just turning into pure misery. But that's not really relevant here. Although it is going to be super cold at Mile High Stadium.
Yeah, it looks like the snow, for what it's worth, and we'll obviously get to that game. Looks like the snow. It's snowing right now, but for game time, it's just going to kind of be cold. I don't think
Yeah, only
precipitation.
24 degrees and flurries now.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be overly important, to be
Right.
honest.
Maybe not. 24 degrees is pretty cold
That
though.
is cold.
Um,
Yeah, in the thin air. No, I mean we'll get to that game. I definitely still have some thoughts on the old Broncos.
all right, let's dive into it then, because I mentioned to you before we started the stream that I think we're gonna have a lot of different opinions on this slate, which always makes it fun, right? It always makes it more interesting, and I think the spot where I'm definitely going to be getting a, at least I planned on being different was tight end. Some injuries might change that a little bit, but here we go. Tampa Bay and Atlanta will start here. Obviously, the most fantasy relevant game on the slate on many levels. This game right now, you're looking at an over under of 57 and a half. It's in Atlanta. Honestly, there are so many ways you can attack this game, and there are ways that you can be different with this game while still attacking it and not getting chalky. But that's risky in itself. With me though, Ben, I don't find like I don't think there's any possible way that Atlanta goes to 1-5 at home this week. I don't see any possible way it happens.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I'll take it a step further. I actually see no way they could lose, but if they lose, it has to be a shootout. I can't imagine them not putting up points in this situation. So yeah, maybe their defense, because it's really bad, loses a back and forth game. But in terms of the Falcons for the DFS side, it's to me, it's just a matter of different combinations of Falcons because I don't see many scenarios where they're just ineffective moving the ball at home against probably the worst defense in the league.
Yeah. I mean, both of these defenses are bad, but one of them is backed so far into a corner that they're they've pretty much already dashed any hopes of postseason entrance. And now it's like if you go 1-5, it's a wrap. I think what is this, the Mercedes Benz Dome or something? I think they go in there and they just put up a ridiculous amount of points. But I mean, look, that's not to say that I don't like Tampa too. I think this is a stellar spot for Jameis. And I'm not telling you anything that we don't already know. Mike Evans, and then you have guys like Godwin and Jackson and Brait, but those are where I'm not nearly as confident. Like, where are you at on a guy in Cameron Brait who, yeah, I get it. He's Winston's guy. Um, yeah, he's Winston's guy, but so is Adam Humphries, and he's never scored more than 7 fantasy points in a game. So it's tough. And then you have OJ Howard, who is he got in a full practice the other day. He's going to play. Like, it definitely takes a lot of shine off of Cameron Bray.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I wrote up Cameron Brady was in my article. Was probably my favorite tight end on the slate, and he's fallen way down now. I think he's still in play. I don't hate it because the ownership's going to dive now that OJ Howard's playing, but it's just I think along with the ownership diving, the upside is somewhat capped. So the Bucs are tricky. I don't know exactly how to attack them. Obviously, my first thought with like most is, oh, Atlanta, they can't defend the running backs. That's a tricky spot though. The Bucs have no running backs. I mean, Peyton Barber, I would say, gets still the first shot. It's hard to feel super confident. I do have some, but it's tricky.
Yeah, I'm not touching one single running back from
Ooh.
Atlanta or from Tampa. I mean, look, Peyton Barber has been so dreadfully bad
Really bad.
that he was essentially benched in that blowout for Ronald Jones, who was so much worse than Barber in training camp and preseason that he was not even dressing through the first few weeks. I mean, think about that, right? One of them was so much worse than the one that was so much worse than him before that now they're just all so much worse than any other running back. Like
Yeah.
it's
In a
bad, dude.
way, and I know it sounds ridiculous, I think Peyton Barber reasserted himself by default as the lead guy because Ronald Jones, I know they gave him some run against the Bears. It wasn't great, and I think Barber gets the first crack. The question for me is, I mean, can they attack through the air? I mean, we've seen all these good running backs gut Atlanta through the pass. Can Jones do that, or is Jacque? I don't know about that situation, but I do have some. I mixed and matched on the Bucs side. It's hard not to have some if you think that Atlanta really puts up a lot of points.
Yeah. Where are you at? I guess the biggest question too, where are you at on Evans? Because, you know, most projections are going to have him coming in as like not a great value because of where his price is at comparatively to other wide receivers, right? You got him as the third highest wide receiver here on DraftKings. Like, are you just not been paying for him? Because I will be in some spots. I think this is a good enough spot for Evans to explode. And, you know, it's tough because there's obviously chalk when it comes to Julio, but once again, I it's so hard for me not to pull the trigger on Julio here, man. Like it doesn't really matter if he's popular. I have to get some Julio into lineups. Like there's no way I'm not going to have a decent amount of Julio. I can't not do it.
Yeah, it's really difficult to not play him because we've even with all the tilting, and it's not the downside. We know the risk there, but when he gets, I mean, Julio has games unlike most people when he really gets going, just monster 250-yard games. On the Evans side, I'm under right now. Just it was hard because you pair him and Julio, and now it's like okay, you're probably using Ryan in that spot or even Jameis. You're gonna have to pay down in a couple other spots, and there are some value that opened up. But and Trufant, he battled AB last week. Not that I assume he will draw Evans. We'll see. I mixed and matched. I have some Deshaun Jackson. I don't mind Godwin, like you mentioned.
All right. Yeah, it's tough. You get the impression that someone's going to go off here that didn't last week. I'll tell you this much though. When it comes to Austin Hooper, I'm not. I had a decent amount of Hooper last week. I actually have less this week than last week. I think that game funneled a lot to Hooper. We saw Joe Hayden really shut Julio down through the first three quarters, right? And that's where Hooper got most of his production. I think this feels like a game where Hooper might luck into a touchdown. He might have a long reception or so, but there's no way. I don't see any way that Hooper sees the force feeding that he did last week. I don't see any way against this putrid Tampa Bay secondary. So I actually think this matchup almost downgrades him from last week because last week we knew that they were funneling the ball to him because Julio just was blanketed. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think with OJ Howard playing, a lot of people are going to move from Brait to Hooper in the same game. People are going to use him with Matt Ryan stacks, and I have a little, but I'm with you. He's not. To me, he's just going to be over-owned and a little overvalued. Where I don't think that target share is going to be there. And the Falcons, I mean, there are so many options. We didn't even mention Tevin Coleman. Obviously, Sanu, Calvin Ridley, who I'm not going to talk about, but he seems to just find the end zone at a ridiculous rate. So it's one of those games. You said this at the beginning of the show. It's not just, stack this game. Within the game, it's how do you stack it? How are you structuring? Can you be different while still playing Falcons?
Exactly. And that's what it comes down to. It won't be a lot of Hooper for me. Maybe it gets me into trouble, but it's a risk that I'm certainly willing to take. So let's move on here. We pretty much know where we're at on that game. You're going to want to play it. You're going to want to play you have to play some of this game. Before we move on, let me just ask you this, and then we'll move, just so we can kind of get some closure, because this is a really popular game, right? I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. In terms of Falcons Tampa, right? How plus EV does it even feel to like say, all right, you know what, I'm just going well underweight on this game? Because to me, it doesn't.
Yeah, it feels like one of those games where I don't think there's always, of course, there's always a chance, but this seems like a
Of course.
situation. It's more about getting the guys right rather than the game right. I don't think that the Falcons, I don't see many ways they don't produce. I think within the Falcons you can be different though, and that's more important. It's not fade the
For
game,
sure.
it's you can maneuver within it to be unique and maybe take different positions that give you some leverage.
For sure. And I think that's, yeah, I think that's the best way to look at it. All right, let's move on. This next game I'm really interested in, Ben. Washington and Carolina. And if you're talking about going overweight on games, you know, after seeing what happened with Alex Wood and his just consistent, unrelenting hospital ball attempts that were, he was trying to kill players, right? Like he was trying to kill Chris Thompson
He did a
and
good
Jordan
job.
Reed. I was going to say, unfortunately, he only succeeded with 5 of the 6. But Crowder, per Adam Schefter last night around midnight, said that Thompson and Crowder are both not expected to play. We still, unless you've seen it, I don't see any word on Richardson or Dotson yet. We'll find out. Peterson, I think, is expected to play, but all these guys are game time decisions. We should be learning sooner than later. I mentioned to you before the show, I am going to have a lot of Jordan Reed. It's very seldom is Jordan Reed the only healthy player on the offense. Usually it's the other way around. Coming off a bad game where he only saw 2 targets, I think that changes. I think Jordan Reed gets peppered in a game where, did I say Alex Wood legalized? Just he said I said Alex
Yeah, you
Wood.
did, but Alex Smith needs to change his name after last week.
Alex, yeah, Alex Smith. Sorry, I think hopefully everyone knew where I was going with that. No, I just think Jordan Reed is in a phenomenal spot. Carolina has been crushed by tight ends already. I expect him to see an immense workload here. I'll even have some Maurice Harris, who played 80% of the snaps with 8 targets last week. And yes, I will have some Alex Smith in this game, as disgusting as it feels. And I'll be running it back with quite a bit of Christian McCaffrey. So there you have it. That's where I'm at on Washington. I like this game quite a bit, Ben, and I wish I didn't.
I'm into it too. I don't think I'm as high as you. I do have some Reed. This tight end slate is decimated. He's, in my opinion, the best tight end, in terms of spending up, no doubt. They have no players left. Maurice Harris, it's really hard to. It's similar to Julio in the sense it's just like you're kind of drawn to him even if you don't want to be. Totally different scenario, obviously, but he's the flat min, and it opens it up so much. You have to assume I don't see any reason why he would get less of anything, considering now they're even more banged up. So that's a juicy spot. Don't mind Alex Smith as being off the grid. The question I had, and do you have any AP?
No, I don't.
No?
I don't. And honestly, I've considered it, right? Because it would make sense in a game that should be that should be competitive. I would think so. He's been really, he's been great or bad. There's no in between for Peterson. Totally boom or bust. But I don't have an issue with Peterson though, and here's why, Ben. Because I keep landing on lineups, because I'm ham making more this week than I have in the previous 5 weeks, where I have between like 44 and 4,900 left for an RB2.
Yep. Yeah, I think a lot of people are, maybe it's just you and me. That's happened to me a good amount, and it's put the spotlight on him. I don't mind it. Ultimately, there's a couple other guys that we'll get to that I have a little ahead of him in that same range. But yeah, they say his workload's going to be big, and you would think that the Redskins are going to try to control the clock. If they get behind, it's going to be pretty ugly because they're just so banged up.
Yeah, right. And if that's, well, here's the thing: if Washington gets behind, it's going to be Capri Bibbs.
That's insane. Yeah, who?
It is though. Like I highly doubt they're going to have Peterson in there.
Yeah,
catching pass. I know he's received 3 targets in 3 of his 4 starts, but like I I'd be very surprised if Capri Bibbs doesn't come down as your third down back, or from behind back, if this is the case. That's just my guess.
No,
I feel pretty confident in that.
I'm with you. I for what it's worth, and I think you would agree, I have Maurice Harris way ahead of him in terms of the flat min cheap.
Oh yeah, me too.
I expect him to be involved regardless of game script, and he's going to be on the field a lot, as you alluded to.
Talking about the flat min guys, I actually had a little bit of interest in Ito Smith from the previous game. It's disgusting, but at 3,100, I think you could do worse, just because this guy, in terms of red zone touches, just going back to that previous game, Ito Smith in week 2 had 6 touches or 6 looks inside the red zone. And then he had in week 4, he had 4 looks inside the red zone. Even last week with Freeman healthy, he had a carry inside the red zone. They're using him on goal line, inside the 10 touches and passing plays. So just throwing that out there, that it's not the craziest idea. He has like 13 looks, so targets plus carries inside the red zone this season. And he's a guy that's been playing at like a 30% playing time clip. So not the craziest thing, but yeah, I have Maurice Harris definitely above him. And look, Ben, this is an overrated Carolina defense, right? We saw how bad Eli Manning was on Thursday. Like, this is an Eli Manning and a Giants team. I know Beckham threw a touchdown as well. They dropped 31 points. I think it was their first time in like 30 games or something that they posted 30 points. I mean, this is not a good Carolina defense.
No, I mean, people aren't really talking about that game because Gano bailed them out. They should have lost to the Giants. And the Giants are very bad, as we've seen. So I'm with you. It's not beyond the realm that this game gets out there a little. You mentioned McCaffrey, no problem with him. Every week, he can do it in multiple dimensions. I want to be sneaky and look to Olsen. I just think coming back with a foot in particular, they probably ease him back. So gonna take a wait and see there. Not much interest. Cam's a guy who I don't mind running out alone because he has rushing upside that he likes to take it himself sometimes. But I'm not really trying to get too sneaky on the Carolina side, usually just the big weapons.
Yeah, I don't have any problem running Cam out there, or Cam plus McCaffrey lineups. Like, that's one quarterback running back pairing I don't mind at all. Devin Funchess, I guess he's fine, but I'm not super interested in him. It feels like his upside is 5 for 70 and a touchdown, right? So right, with that being the case, I'm not necessarily high there. I really love McCaffrey though here. It's really hard not to like someone, Ben, who is going to see 20 plus touches in some form or fashion, regardless of what form this game takes.
Yeah, I mean, his ability, around the league right now, his floor is towards the top for any player, just because you can really pencil him in for the touches, game script proof, one of the only reliable options they have, and he's a good player. He is very good. Now the price is getting up there. Upside, I still think it's there, but it's certainly trickier now that he's in the 8s. But no problem if you can fit him. The trick is, how many guys can you take? We've talked about some big name receivers already. I have a couple other running backs that I do like who are kind of pricey. So it's just the opportunity cost.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move on then. We got a little bit of time to go here. I want to get all these games in. And obviously what we'll do is we'll cruise over some of these games we don't like as much to get good information on the ones we do like. Seattle and Oakland, we got a London game here, Ben.
Yeah.
This is one where when they first started playing in London, it was the field conditions and the weather and a lot of low scoring games. But now you've seen London games higher scoring, and maybe because they're playing better teams over there. Not to say that these teams are better teams, but better teams over the past couple of years, kind of like what we've seen with Thursday Night Football. So the scores have come up, or teams are just becoming more familiar with it. I mean, it was kind of new to everyone not too long ago. 52 degrees, you got a little bit of drizzle here, so not terrible conditions. So here's where you're probably just going to want to end the stream and discontinue our friendship for good. I have a lot of Amari Cooper, dude. I'm doing it. I'm doing it a lot. Here's the thing. You can say what you want. Not you, but anybody, right? Oh, why would you play Amari Cooper? He always drops the ball. He's terrible. Well, he actually only has one drop this year. has games with only one target as well. Well, his games have gone terrible. Well, say dog shit, great, dog shit, great, dog shit. So he's on pace for a great game here. All joking aside, Amari Cooper at 5,200, and this is all it comes down to. Amari Cooper at 5,200 simply has too much upside for me to ignore, and that's all it is. He has too high a ceiling for me to ignore him at 5,200. I mean, we just saw him come off a 30-point game. He has a 25-point game. So despite those bad ones, I'm playing tournaments. If he posts a 2, Ben, or an 11, it really makes no difference.
Yep.
It's the 28 to 30-point game I'm looking for, and I know that he can do it. And I know that this Seattle secondary is not only banged up, but is bad. Yeah, I have a decent amount of Amari Cooper here.
It's honestly, all joking aside too, because he's the easiest guy to rip on.
He sure is.
One of the easiest / in my opinion, better plays to break down because it's really simple. When you have a guy who's averaging, what is this? He's averaging, it says 12.6 fantasy points per game, but he hasn't been even close to that in any game. And that's what you want.
Exactly.
You want a guy who is just going to say, okay, I'm playing him in tournaments. If he gives me one of these two things, I would be ecstatic, 0 or 30. That's perfect. Give me that every time. Sign me up. That's an awesome situation. There are other guys who average 12 points a game and they get 10 to 14 every week. And that's great for cash. It's great if you're in a jam, but that's not what you really want. So Julio, he's Amari, you can fire him up and you know that he could end any team that he's on really fast. But at the same time, how many other guys in the 5K range, if you said one of them's going to get 30, would you put above him?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's all it comes down to. He does have the 30 fantasy point upside. Like, we know it.
Yeah. He's doing it 40% of the time right now in this garbage year already. Like, 2 out of 5 weeks, he's smoked. And the other 3, he's been so bad that your team is dead. But you'll roll the dice there every time.
Yeah, that's it, man. And again, that's what it comes down to. So I'm not opposed to it, and I'm going to have a decent amount. And if he only has 2 fantasy points, then so be it. But at least I'm playing. It's better than playing. The way I see it, Ben, it's better than playing like a Devin Funchess at basically the same price and knowing that, he's probably not going to kill me, but the odds of Devin Funchess winning a tournament for me are slim to none. You know what I mean?
Yep. He's a good example of the other side. Like, he's probably going to beat Amari, honestly, more times than not. But when Amari beats him, it'll be by 20 points. And you're reaching in tournaments. That's the whole point of it. You need to hit the ceiling. I like him. And then on the other side of this game, real quick, I like Lockett. We've talked about him. I've used him a lot this year. He's a burner. He's been great. The trick is, can Seattle just lean on Carson? I don't know. They've seemed to be really content using him in Davis and kind of milking the game away. Doesn't make Russ Wilson as appealing as I want him to be, but I do still have a trickle of him and Lockett and hope that the game kind of gets going through the air.
Yeah, I have some Lockett too. Baldwin isn't one that I'm going to have much of, but I do have Lockett. I think if you're in desperate need of a cheap tight end, I'm not going to be paying down at tight end all that much. We know that Nick Vanette's going to play. Vanette, he's dealing with a back injury, but not the craziest idea if you need someone real cheap. Again, not high on him at all, but I've had so many questions about cheap tight ends this week, so I'm throwing him out there. With Carson, man, it's like, I think the thing with Carson, and I keep putting him in and then out of my lineups, I feel like if Carson doesn't give me 100 yards rushing, I don't know if he's going to do anything. Like, I'm worried about him, Ben. I'm worried that Carson is going to have a lot of, I don't know. I guess volume matters more than anything else, and I preach that all the time. So he's still very much in play, but
he's definitely in play. But I totally get would you really be surprised for Carson to have 9.5 fantasy points just because he has 13 carries for 95 yards, and that's all he does? We talk about it all the time, but the value of catching 4 passes for 26 yards is immense. It's so valuable, especially on DraftKings. And when you have no chance to do that, you have to find the end zone.
Yep. Marcos says Carson is a must play today. In cash, yes, Carson's a very good play. In tournaments,
I
you
have him in
do.
cash. Yep.
Yeah, so do I. Do not feel obligated to play Carson in tournaments.
No, not at all. Because again, you in tournaments you need Carson probably to find the end zone twice. I don't see many other ways he really hits a big ceiling without finding the end zone a couple of times.
Right. Cash, absolutely. Tournaments, you're basically like, does he have 20 fantasy point upside? Yes, but you need 100 points or 100 yards plus a touchdown. And he's still splitting work with Mike Davis. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's
like if Wilson throws more than 20 times, which is still very possible, that's not going to go well for these guys in terms of reaching their ceiling. So yeah, for me, it's definitely a cash play. Anything else in this game? It is kind of appealing.
It's not bad. I mean, I wouldn't fault anyone for using Jared Cook. I totally see that. I prefer Reed. I think you do as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Excuse me.
Other than that, I don't have any Marshawn. Not getting too sneaky. Like we've just talked about Carson. That's about it for me.
All right, sounds good. Indy and New York Jets. So here we go, Ben. Eric Ebron, you want to tell everyone what ailments he's dealing with?
Yeah, Ebron. So he said he's going to play, but it says Ebron shin/quad/ankle/knee is questionable. So he has a good hamstring, but besides that, his entire leg seems to be injured. I don't know why they didn't just say leg, but yeah, Ebron, most expensive tight end on the slate, and he's got 4 leg injuries. I'm not sure that's the spot. I have some interest in this game, all jokes aside, though. I don't mind the cheap Colts receivers. Chester Rogers, probably my favorite. I don't think I'm going to mess around with Marlon Mack. I know he's back with Hines. Just going to wait and see on that side. And then it looks like Crowell is going to play. That takes the once surefire cash play of Bilal Powell into a tournament only for me.
Absolutely, man. Bilal Powell has actually been the more appealing back from a week to week standpoint in this backfield. By the way, Crowell leads the AFC in rushing yards, which is hilarious. Just hilarious. Yeah, it's terrible, right? Powell still saw 20 carries last week, though. Like Powell is still the guy that's seen 6+ targets in 2 of 5 games. He's still interesting to me, but again, it's that $4,400 to $4,900 range where it's like there are guys available. I don't love any of them in tournaments. Like in cash, Carson at 44, okay, easy enough, right? But in tournaments, like you have Powell, you have Carson, you have AP, you have all of these guys like Tariq Cohen and Peterson and Hyde. All of them, you're like, okay, not bad plays, but are any of these guys capable of giving me what I need? And that's the tough thing. And I'm with you with Powell. Now that Crowell is expected to play, I think Powell can still have a solid game, but it definitely takes some shine away from him, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, he's still getting enough volume where I don't mind using him. I still am because the ownership's going to drop, but God, it's tricky. There's a lot of running. You just rattled off a bunch of guys who, if someone told me they were playing them, I would say I don't mind it, but they're all either in timeshares or tough matchups.
Or hurt.
Yeah, a lot of guys are banged up. It's difficult. It's a really tough range. I don't see a clear-cut guy, to be honest. I mixed and matched depending on kind of what my lineup looked like, and Bilal Powell's in that mix for me.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. By the way, seeing in chat, I'm searching Twitter now to make sure. I had Schefter pulled up too, but we're seeing that Crowder wasn't expected to play. Michael L saying that Crowder's out and Richardson's out. So, Mike, if you want to let us know the source there, so I don't have to stop the show, that'd be great. But look, I that just makes Harris and Reed more interesting for me, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, regardless of Richard, like Crowder and Thompson are not going to play, and that enough solidifies Harris for me. So I'm in. Yeah, the Redskins are. It's gonna be interesting, but they're so banged up. I don't even know how many more injuries they need to get these guys. Like they're going to be on the field plenty to play them.
Okay. And now I'm seeing that Richardson is in. All right, I can't take info from this chat anymore, man. It's gonna. I'm silly to have trusted you, Michael. I'm silly to have trusted your information. No, I'm kidding. But Thompson and Crowder are out. Look, that's what we expected.
That's the important part for me.
Yep. And I think that's still the onus still okay, put it this way. You're still talking about guys that are playing that are banged up. Like Richardson and Dotson are not at 100%. So yeah, let's move on here. I agree with you on Rodgers, by the way. I think Hines is interesting, but at that price tag, with Marlon Mack back in the or active, that means that I'm probably just totally avoiding that backfield. Do we agree?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, Arizona and Minnesota. Minnesota at home, unsurprisingly, a monster favorite. Last I looked, they are 10.5, I think, point favorites. Dalvin Cook is, I believe Dalvin Cook is out.
Is he? Ooh.
No,
He's out.
Yeah. So Vikings planned on him being active, but he's now inactive. So that's interesting. So no Dalvin Cook. He's been a colossal bust this season for one reason or another, whether it be injuries, matchup, poor performance, or all of them. And you have Adam Thielen coming into this game as the first guy to rack up 100+ yards in 5 straight games. He's got 10+ targets in every single game. But now, Ben, he is priced as the second highest priced receiver, and justifiably so.
Yeah, it is justified. It's still weird to see for me. I guess I just have to get used to him being one of the best because he is. He's great. He's reliable. The targets are there. The yards are there. We'll see. The last time the Vikings were a heavy favorite at home, they got their doors blown off by Josh Allen and the gang. I would be. I think
that's one of my favorite lines, by the way.
What?
Blow the doors off.
Yeah, with the Bills blowing them off. That's rare that they're in the same sentence. I don't see. Obviously, I think it's pretty safe to say the Vikings play well today. I like their defense. If you can afford Thielen, more power to you. It's just a huge opportunity cost. I have some, not my favorite up there. Not messing around with the Cardinals. I've been on David Johnson the entire year. I jumped off pretty hardcore. I don't really have any Cardinals. A lot of Vikings defense for me.
Brandon Warner says vape God. I'm not proud of it, Brandon. It's just the way it is. It's cold outside, and you got to do what you got to do. We had, as somebody had asked about Adam Thielen, is he going to see Peterson? No, Adam Thielen's running 61% of his routes in the slot. He's probably going to see, I would imagine, a ton of Buda Baker, who's running 98% of his routes, or covering in the slot 98% of the time. Patrick Peterson, on the other hand, has only been in the slot 2% this entire season. Meanwhile, Stefan Diggs is lining up either the left or right side at 76% clip. So, yeah, you're going to see a lot of Thielen, Baker lined up or matched up with Thielen, and then we should see a lot of Peterson on Stefan Diggs. And my guess is that Treadwell could also see some. I don't expect to see like straight shadow coverage here, but yeah, Thielen's going to see a lot of Baker here for sure, Ben.
Yeah, he's like I said, it's nothing more than when you pay $8,500 for Thielen. There's just a lot that could go wrong. That's not in his control. Like Rosen could throw a couple pick sixes, Murray runs one in, and then it's 21-3 before they blink. And he has a fine game, but for tournament upside, it's tough. Now, if you play him, you got to hope, he gets it early or the game stays competitive enough for him to get that target share. He's been, you couldn't ask for a better start. The guy does it every single week. So I do have some, but not super high on it altogether.
Yeah, you know how like in baseball, when a guy hits a home run in 4 straight games, you're like, all right, this is awesome. But with hot streaks, you can't really predict. You know that a hot streak exists, but you can't quantify when it's going to begin or when it's going to end. Well, football, it's a little bit different because there's only 16 games. But you just broke a record for the most 100-yard games to start a season. It almost feels like fate would have it that Thielen, despite the solid matchup, just might come back down to earth because, gravity.
Yeah, I've been saying that.
You know what I mean?
I've been saying that with Kamara for like 2 years now, and another 60-point game probably on the way whenever he next plays. But I'm with you. Regression is a real thing. We don't know what you're basically saying there, and you're right. He's going to probably regress. It's not like he's going to have 100 yards every game forever, but we don't know when that's going to be. He's a great player. There's no doubt. The price is reflective of a guy who's been playing lights out.
You know
It's
what's
tough.
going to happen?
Yeah.
David Johnson. This will be the game David Johnson goes off.
If that's the case, I'm really going to be upset because I have 0% and I've been at least 2, 3, 4x over
Yeah,
the field every single week now.
yeah. I had 67% Johnson last week,
Yep. Yeah.
and that fourth quarter touchdown really salvaged. But it still was an inefficient game where they didn't use him as they should have. Like the fact that he's not getting targeted enough in the passing game, right? Like he should have 8+ targets in every game, Ben. He really should. And because that's not the case, I can't trust him right now.
No, he should be Saquon Barkley in the role. Like, I don't understand why he's not luck boxing into 12 targets just off the top. And then, even if it's inefficient, it raises that floor. For me, this is just, it's a gut feel. I think this is a get right spot for the Vikings defense. They haven't put together a really good game yet. I wouldn't be stunned to see them really lay it on pretty hard today.
I'm with you, man. All right, let's talk Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Cincinnati's allowed a lot of pass catching yards and just a lot of work to pass catching running backs this year. So it does make Connor interesting to me. And then obviously you have Joe Mixon at 7,500. Speaking on DraftKings, so a little bit cheaper than your Gordons and McCaffreys. Let's start with the running backs here. Tell me where you're at.
Yeah, Mixon's my favorite running back on the entire slate.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
really like him this week. You were spot on. They did not ease him back. Gave him 25 touches last week. No reason to think he doesn't even eclipse that here. I'm just, I really like Mixon. I think he's a really good player. They're at home. Pittsburgh's defense, certainly nothing that I'm too worried about. I expect him to get it done in a variety of ways. Obviously, he can catch the ball. Floor seems safe. It's another one. I guess this is the theme of the show for me. With the lack of options, it's an opportunity cost in the sense that I don't have many. I don't think he has to beat 6 guys that I love. I don't really have that many other options up there, whether it's guys in tougher matchups like Zeke or just, some guys that I'm not as interested in this week. He stood out as almost alone for me up top. I made room for him for sure.
I like him a lot too.
Yeah, you're a mixing
You're
guy. We were always
yeah. I know. We always thought he should have been better than he was.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on McCaffrey though? And like we already talked about him, but with these two, how much more do you like Mixon than McCaffrey?
I mean the 800 obviously is a little factor. I have him well ahead in terms of ownership.
Okay.
For me, no problem with McCaffrey, but I have a lot. Mixon's potentially my highest owned play on the slate right now. Haven't finished building, but I'm well over 50%.
All right, interesting. Yeah, I actually like the running backs more in this game than pass catchers. Now, AJ Green, there was a question yesterday in Slack chat, which by the way, if you are a member of awesomeo.com, a premium member, and you haven't taken advantage of our Slack chat, do that. We had guys in there yesterday that had just hopped in for the first time. We're like, I can't believe I haven't been in here. I gained so much valuable information at like midnight. There's just always people in there talking, providing great info and going back and forth, when content isn't being churned out at 2 a.m. or whatever time you're able to get on there. So check that out if you are a premium member. If not, you head over to awesomeo.com. Also, we definitely appreciate if you guys could hit this video with a like. It's a free video. It helps us keep the lights on. It does us many favors. So from us to you, this video, from you to us, a simple click on the like button. Greatly appreciated. AJ Green, though, Ben, he's running like a third of his routes in the slot this year, which is really interesting. So I think he gets away from Joe Hayden a bit here. Hayden's been in the slot 2%, so it does make some sense. But I'll tell you what, I think Tyler Boyd is a good play. He's not. You expect him to see like way less of Hayden, if any at all. So I do think he's an interesting play, but he's now up to 6K. This is surprisingly a game where I'm very underweight on the pass catchers. Could it come back to bite me in the ass? Absolutely. But just I've had a lot of Brown, Juju, Boyd, Green like every week this year. It feels like, well, some combination. It's not really the case this week for me.
Yeah, same for me. And it's not even that I hate the plays. It's I just prioritized elsewhere, whether it was different games, and I like Mixon that I just talked about. So I didn't have room. I have some AJ Green. I think he sets up pretty well the way Pittsburgh structures that defense. But again, you're paying 8K, not ideal, and I prioritize some other weapons. So Could burn me, of course, but you can't take a stand everywhere. And for me, gonna have to live and roll the dice that no one explodes.
Yeah, pretty much. Um, yeah, I'm just not as high on the pass catchers. Quickly, because we got to move on here. What are your thoughts on Uzuma? I've heard rumblings of people playing this guy. Tyler Croft is out, so he's probably going to play He's going to play 90+% of snaps.
Yeah, he's going to be on the field a lot. I don't really have any interest, to be honest, though. He just doesn't strike me as a guy who, regardless, is going to see the targets. He'll be on the field, but if you want a complete punt and you hope that on his 3 targets he finds the end zone, I get it. But I did not make room for him.
Yeah, yeah. I like him more than a couple other dirt cheap guys, but I'm still not huge on him. So that's where I'm at. He needs to find the end zone 100%. Like if he doesn't score, it doesn't matter what his price is. You need a touchdown. I think we'd both agree there.
Yep.
All right. I almost said Clippers. Basketball's quickly approaching. The LA Chargers and Cleveland. Here's one that you like more than I do. And I know you have some Baker. I know you like David Njoku quite a bit. I'm not saying that I don't think these guys are very viable, but I think I'm taking a different approach. Let's hear about where you're at, because, again, I think we have a different approach here. And it's not because I don't love them. It's just a lot of roster construction. But we'll go back and forth and see if we can work it out.
Yeah, it's to be honest, I think Baker is going to be somewhat popular, and I'm coming in underway. I have a little Baker. The guy that I really like is Njoku. So a ton of targets last week. The tight end situation got a little muddied because of Braid, and I rolled a lot of shares to him. I'm kind of bummed. I thought he was a great GPP play when the Braid situation looked like he was going to funnel a ton of ownership. Having said that, I still am rolling with him. I think Baker looks to him more and more today. Think he finds the end zone, to be honest. And if those kind of targets that he's going to see, he's still sub 4K. So he's by far my favorite play from this game. On the other side, real quick, I have a little Rivers to Keenan Allen. They've been quiet this year. I think they're going to be quiet on the slate in terms of ownership. Browns defense is solid. I was first to market on that, but they're at the same time, they're no juggernaut. And Phillip Rivers, I still expect to be able to move the ball.
I think so too. By the way, Hunter M pointed out, and he's right, that we forgot to touch on Lat Murray. I was trying to speed through some of these so we can get out of here in time, but we should go back to that quickly. What are your thoughts on Murray? He was so dominant against Buffalo.
Yeah.
When Dalvin Cook was out. It's really hard not to love him here.
Yeah, that's just bank on Lat Murray. Honestly, for me, he's you talked about it, and I threw him in that bucket of those 4K guys that I think there's serious red flags with. And we saw this happen already with Buffalo. I'm not saying that's what happens again, but I'm not rostering Lat Murray and feeling great. For me, he's a cash play along with Carson-esque. One of those guys I think should be probably in your cash lineup.
Yeah, I think so too. That's what it comes down to. No, so Murray, you're right. Murray's like in the Carson category, and it's really that simple. Totally agree. Good matchup. The game script should very much favor him. So yeah, there's that. In Cleveland, look, I don't have a problem with any of these guys. I actually will have some Carlos Hyde, just because even though his snap counts have been dropping, his touches are still up there. He still saw 20 looks, 17 carries, and 3 targets last week. Like there's still enough there where it's not like where Chubb is coming in and just siphoning everything away, and Duke Johnson hasn't been involved much at all. So. Or at least not to the extent that he wants to be. So I think Hyde is fine here in a game that I expect to stay competitive. On the Chargers side, though, I don't know how much I'm going to have. Like, obviously, Melvin Gordon is matchup proof. I put him in the same category as McCaffrey. So, you want to play Melvin Gordon, you just play him because they're both really good and they're both going to see the ball no matter what the situation is. That's all you need to know about that. But outside of that, like, not going to be paying for Keenan Allen here. I think there are other guys I like more. Mike Williams, Terrell Williams, any of these guys don't really stand out. So it's mostly the Cleveland side of the ball, and I think you're saying the same thing outside of Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, Gordon, I prefer those other options we've talked about, but
so do I, just to be clear.
Yeah, he's so good you can always play him. And I do have some Rivers to Keenan Allen, and that's mostly based because I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to go with that logic that you said because it's very sound. But that's a pairing that I historically they've been awesome, and if I can get them at a really low ownership, I'll roll the dice to try to differentiate where I bought into a lot of that Falcons chalk on certain lineups, and that's a way to get away with still having the game that I still like.
For sure. By the way, according to Football Outsiders, Chargers ranked number 1 in DVOA against opposing tight ends. So I do think this matchup for David Njoku is harder than is being discussed. That's all I'm saying.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's going to be a pivotal point for me.
Yeah, and that's where I said we differ. I have a lot less Njoku than you do. That's the one spot we're a lot different there. And I do have a little bit of Carlos Hyde, but I think I'll pivot to a little bit of Latavius Murray. There's no way I'm going overweight on him, though. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think the upside's there. Maybe it is, right? But maybe we see a game where, like an Isaiah Crowell, Lat Murray just breaks out. But for us to sit here and project him to do that would be disingenuous for sure.
That's accurate.
All right. Houston and Buffalo. We will just ignore Buffalo as a team. I apologize to anyone who was chomping at the bit to hear Bill's analysis, but trying to get out of here on time and still cover everything as comprehensively as possible. Houston side of the ball, though. We're hoping Will Fuller's back to full health. He was basically a decoy last week. Qt was targeted 7 times, hauled in 6 for 51 and a touchdown. And DeAndre Hopkins had one of the nicest receptions I think I've ever seen, with 17 spin moves in one 49-yard scamper. So he's just a beast, but he's going to see a lot of Tre'Davious White, who has actually been really, 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 really good this year. And from everything I'm seeing, he's active, no problem. So does that concern you?
It does. I do have some Hopkins still, but he's no joke, and that's certainly the Bills' defense isn't terrible. The problem is the Bills' offense is so bad that there are a lot of times in really precarious positions for no fault of their own. Like the Texans' defense, Deshaun Watson always has upside. He took some massive shots against the Cowboys. I don't know if they try to limit his wheels. He is playing, no problems there, but I have some Texans, but honestly, it's mostly the defense. I think I get away from this game and don't think I get burned too many times.
Yep, pretty much. I actually have less. Qt is someone that everyone's talking about. I totally understand it. I'll have some of him, but I'm not loading up on him.
Yeah.
Fuller to me is really interesting. I just wish he wasn't almost $7,000. That seems a little prohibitive here, being that he has been dealing with injuries. But here's the thing: Fuller's also one of those guys like Amari in the sense that he definitely, when he's not hurt, he has a higher floor. But he has a high ceiling as well. So I never have any issue with him or Hopkins, but I will have less Hopkins just because of the other receivers around him that I like more. That's all it comes down to. You have to take a stand somewhere, Ben.
Yep. It's just one of those things. I wish I could play them all. You would just get raked then. And so, yeah, I think I can sacrifice this. The back end of the slate, I've sacrificed a lot. I don't think these games coming up that we're going to talk about are really good ones.
Yeah, Texans defense too. Perfectly fine spot for them.
Absolutely.
Miami and Chicago, no Ryan Tannehill. We have Brock Osweiler here. But I will say that, Gase has done a lot to limit the quarterbacks in general. Brock Osweiler is still terrible. There's no doubt. But I really wouldn't be surprised that unless this game flips on its head and Chicago's up very early, which I don't know if that's going to happen. None of us do. I don't expect Brock Osweiler to be chucking 40 times here.
Yep.
I think they have gadget players in Wilson and Grant. I expect them, not to say I'm playing them, but I bet they get involved more just because they're going to need to do stuff to take the pressure off of a bad quarterback in Osweiler. So obviously Chicago's defense is sound, no doubt. It's a good play. But I wouldn't be surprised, again, to see Brock Osweiler not really throw much because they don't want him to throw much, because why would they ever want Brock Osweiler to throw much?
Yeah, I think it's a case where I wouldn't be stunned to see him more ineffective in real life football than DFS, where he's just like 11 of 22 for 60 yards. Like, that's horrible, of course. But that's not really what you'd rather have him, 18 for 40 with 2 touchdowns and 4 picks,
right.
Slinging it all over. And like you said, unless Jordan Howard, unless Trubisky is just actually amazing, I don't think what he did against the Bucs is indicative of anything. So we'll see how this game plays out. I'm not saying I think the Dolphins win, because I don't. But at the same time, I don't think it's just going to be where the Bears steamroll them.
Right. I actually agree with you there. I'm not Terry Cohen, another one of those 4K guys. I just don't have much interest in him. I don't have much interest in Drake. Uh, the entirety of this game, like you could definitely convince me to play some Allen Robinson or some Taylor Gabriel. But these guys are all for me tertiary plays right now. There's just so many other great plays on this slate. It comes down to where am I going to prioritize, and I'm having trouble prioritizing anyone from this game.
Yeah, I have some Jordan Howard. Obviously, I have some Bears defense, but not a lot from this game.
Yeah, pretty much. Definitely have some Bears defense, and I'll sprinkle in some of these guys too. Like I'll sprinkle in some Gabriel and some Robinson, but I don't think I'm gonna have any Terry Cohen. And Jordan Howard to me, it just right now isn't really worth 6,500. I'm not even worried about last week, right? Like it's not. I'm not worried about that. Cohen caught the hot hand, but I'm just more worried about his price tag being higher than it should be.
No, it's fair. Again, I think sometimes when a guy like that, his price being up a little is almost a bonus because he's either going to get in the end zone multiple times or crash and burn. And then if he's 5,700 or 65, what's the difference? But he might be really low owned.
Yeah, definitely possible. All right, Rams and Denver. So there's like snow blanketing the stadium right now, but in the field, but it's supposed to stop by game time. You still have a few hours to go, several hours to go, but it is going to be cold there. I still can't completely get away from this game. Like I think Demaryius Thomas is interesting. Philip Lindsay is interesting. On the opposite side, Woods and Cooks are interesting. Obviously, Gurley, if you want to pay for him, is in and out. Gurley is, if you're not talking about price point, Gurley is not even close the best running back on this slate. With how bad Denver's been with the conditions here at Mile High Stadium, but he's egregiously expensive. And I'm not even saying he's overpriced. All I'm saying is it's going to be really hard to fit him in and love your lineup as a result.
Yeah, I mean, if you take him, it changes the entire complexity of your lineups. And I'm doing that in certain circumstances. The snow, I've softened, I looked at the Broncos defense. I still have a smidge, but I definitely softened on that now that it looks like the snow is not going to be a real factor in the game.
Yeah.
I'm higher on the Broncos than most, though. I said that I think they win this game, and I'm sticking with that. I know that's really against the grain, so don't take that
That's
to the bank.
wild.
But I expect them to really play well in a spot that they need. They're certainly overmatched, and that's not to say that I'm fading these Rams. Like when I can get Gurley, I'm doing it. But I do think this will be an interesting test for the Rams on the whole.
Yep, so do I. I'm gonna have some Demaryius Thomas though.
Don't mind
I'm gonna
that.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Sanders, the matchup for Sanders is less appealing, but they're gonna have to air it out. I even had some interest in Keenum, but I'm just not landing on him. Like I'm just not getting down. I don't think it's necessary, right? Not in the conditions. If anything, I'll be sprinkling in just plays from this game. Assuming if the weather wasn't as bad, I'd have a lot more. So I'm letting it influence my decision a little, but I'm not fading this game either. Like I think Cooks is still in a fine spot. If anyone, Cooper Kupp gets probably the toughest matchup against Harris, but even so, like this secondary for Denver has been so bad, Ben, that I still could see this game, going over 50. I could still see that being the case. But I guess we'll have to see, man. I guess we'll see how it turns out. The over under right now is what's it sitting at? Did it come down? I'm trying to change this over.
I have not seen
51.5. So it came down like a point since last time.
Nothing major.
No. Baltimore and Tennessee. Anything interest you here? You go into Crabtree, who leads the league in drops, but is very cheap. Any interest?
Now this game, I don't have much. I like John Brown. He's seeing the targets. I don't mind him 5,500. Good price. Kind of a no man's land where he's just. I don't want to say he's a staple of my lineups because he's not, but he's a great filler. Where I have other lineups where I made combinations and it's like, oh, I need a guy who I think will just return a solid game, and he fits that mold. I ultimately didn't get to Dion Lewis. He's yet another guy in that 4K batch of running backs. No Corey Davis. Not a lot from this game.
Me neither. I might sprinkle in some Crabtree just because he's so cheap. And even though he's been terrible, he's 4,700 and he's seen double-digit targets in 3 of his last 4 games. And volume. I like volume, man. Volume matters to me. But Tennessee has a good pass rush. Their run defense has been the problem, but I'm not going to Alex Collins, and I don't think Buck Allen's necessary. If I were to pick one of them, it would be Allen over Collins, not even a question. But I don't think you need to. And in the Tennessee side, Baltimore's defense has been so stellar, just absolutely incredible. I don't, Ben, I see no reason to go to Tennessee here.
Yeah, it's just an unnecessary risk. You got to get we've talked about this a lot. It's not only that you have to get the play right, and then you got to pick the right guy within the Titans. I don't think they're effective.
Right.
And even if they are, good luck determining if it's Henry or Lewis or Davis or Tywan Taylor.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll move on to the last one here and then turn it over. Live before lock, going to take you up to lock at 1 o'clock. You can follow me on Twitter at Lofty_D, LOUGHY_D, and Ben at JazzRazDFS, double Z, single Z. Make sure you get that right. It's right on the screen there. If you have any questions, hit us up on Twitter or in Slack chat afterwards, being that we got to hop out of here in just a moment. Jacksonville and Dallas. Here it is. Ben, I have a lot of Dallas defense. I said last week, people said, what are you talking about? Had a bunch of Buffalo defense because they were dirt cheap. They did not burn me whatsoever. I think they finished with 13.
Yeah, they were good.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that. I could see Dallas finishing with somewhere between 10 and 12. Bortles throws a lot of interceptions. And quite frankly, the only reason Dallas hasn't gotten blown out every week is because of their defense. Their defense is solid. Their offense is putrid. I think Dallas at 2,300 would be the one team that I don't mind going cheap on. I know you have Denver in there. We disagree there, but Dallas would be my cheap team here at 2,300.
Definitely different. Yeah, I think Dallas certainly safer. I don't see many ways where Jacksonville lights them up on the road. Bortles known to throw. We saw last week what he's capable of. I don't have much. I did get to some Zeke just because I think he's going to be totally off the map. And they have no choice. I mean, it's not a matter of game script or anything else. They have 0% chance to hang in this game unless he's effective. It's just for lack of options. So if he's getting the volume that I know he's going to get, you can always, put a guy like that in play, especially when the sites with flexible pricing, they save because of the Jacksonville defense, who is a great team.
I agree. I have nothing on this game. No, I'm not going to Jeff Swaim or anybody else. It's Dallas defense for me. Outside of that, I think this stays low scoring, and it should be a defensive battle. For Ben Rasa and myself, Dave Lockren, it's been fun. We'll see you back here week 7. Thanks again for all of the for hanging out with us and for all of the likes. Look at that. We're getting the likes up there, man. I love to see that. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
appreciate you guys. Not that one downvote, though. I don't know. What do you downvote for? It's free.
That's when I said the Broncos were going to win.
Yeah, probably.
It's fair.
All right. Stick around. Live before lock. Chris Spags, Josh Engelman starting right now. Good luck. We'll see you next week. So same time.